Welcome back to This Week. I'm pleased to be joined by Todd Cruz. He's the chairman of the board of directors of the nonprofit Voices for a Safer Tennessee. Todd, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
For folks who don't know, Voices for a Safer Tennessee promotes policies that support firearm safety, responsible gun ownership, and was really born out of the Covenant school shooting tragedy. Tell us a little bit more about the makeup of Voices for a Safer Tennessee and your goals.
Sure. And again, thank you for having us. So Voices for Safer Tennessee is made up of about 30,000 coalition members from all 95 states. From all 95 counties in our state. We have a robust board of directors that is made up of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. We also have a wonderful advisory board made up of some of the top leaders in our state, from Senator Frest to Milton Freeman to others.
Big name folks.
Yeah, big name folks, right? And we all have one common goal, which is how do we make Tennessee a safer place for our kids, right?
You have a mission. The mission is healthier communities by reducing preventable firearms tragedy across the state. Sounds simple, but how do you do that?
Well, we do it in multiple ways, right? It does sound simple, and it should be simple. But we do it in multiple ways. One is through policy. Two is through education, right? We need to educate the community on what's happening. I don't think people realize that firearm injury is the number one killer of children in this state. We also have the third highest number of guns stolen from vehicles in this state. Suicide rates in the state of Tennessee with firearms is 50% higher than the national average. So I think there's a lot of educational components, right? So we do it with data, we do it with education, we do it with policy initiatives, and we'd like to engage the business community too.
You read my script. Firearms are the leading cause of death for children in the U.S. In Tennessee, 117 kids die every year by guns. On average, 1,500 Tennesseans die by gun violence. Tennessee is the eighth, as you said, largest or most gun death rate state in the country. Gun violence costs Tennessee $18 billion every year, and gun theft from vehicles is an epidemic. As you said, this is not new information. It's been out there for a while, and yet nothing has happened.
Yeah, well, there's probably plenty of blame to go around why nothing's happened, but it's also, I blame myself, right? I'm a gun owner, I'm a hunter, a Republican, and up until Covenant happened, I didn't look at the statistics. I didn't know what was happening in this state. And so I do think education is a key component of this. We've got to elevate this conversation that you can be for firearm safety and you can be for the Second Amendment. This is not an either or discussion.
But you know Tennessee, too. Gun laws are basically non-existent in Tennessee. It's an open carry state, no permit, no training required to purchase a weapon. I can go out and be back in 5 minutes with a gun. So-called common sense gun reform, red flag laws, enhanced background checks, all been pushed aside by the supermajority Republican legislature, and they continue to approve legislation that makes it easier to buy weapons. So where do you go from? How do you find that common ground? And I agree with you. I think it's out there, but boy, it's going to be hard to dig it out.
Yeah, well, look, we blocked a lot of bad legislation last year with the help of the supermajority, right? I mean, there was a constitutional carry that would allow people to walk around with long guns. Yep. They could stand at the property line of school with a loaded long gun. I mean, common sense prevailed, right? Pragmatically, that is just not what you want in your state. So I think we can get there. I don't think there's anybody, whether you are in the House, in the Senate, sitting in the governor's office, or sitting in your community that doesn't want a safer Tennessee. To your point, it's how do we get there? And I tell you how we don't get there. We don't get there by yelling at the legislature, right? That doesn't work.
No, we saw that. It didn't work.
It didn't work, right? It doesn't work. You've got to get there by sitting down and saying, how can we work together to come up with some sort of solution? And I have to give the legislature credit, right? They passed some pretty good bills last year, and they stopped some really bad bills last year. So there's willingness to work with each other. It's just going to take time, and it's not a sexy topic. It's not a hot topic. I mean, it's something that's just, you got to get in the weeds, right?
Did the special session actually hurt your cause because it got so vocal? The Senate decided it didn't want to do this session ever, and so basically they shut down and never even had hearings on any of the proposals. In the House, it got raucous. Members of Covenant School got thrown out. I mean, all that stuff kind of backfired, and it just got ugly. Has that gone, are we past that now and talking again, or did it hurt your efforts?
It made it harder, that's for sure, right? But I do think we're getting past it. Again, there's a place in democracy for peaceful protest, right? That's everybody's right. But there's also a place to say, hey, this is what the facts are. This is what we think we can do. This is what we should do. How do we make all that work together?
You have three priorities. You want to have firearm safety priorities that are comprehensive background checks, safe storage requirements, and temporary transfer. Let's do these one at a time.
Sure.
Comprehensive background checks. Currently, to buy a gun, you fill out a state form and a federal form. Background checks in about 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. The gun is not registered. There's no registration in Tennessee. What are you proposing for background checks?
So one of the things that we know is that, to your point, there is a process to buy a gun, and that happens, right? I'm a gun owner. I buy shotguns and stuff to hunt with all the time. I go to my local gun store. I get a background check. You go to a gun show, it also happens. Where it doesn't happen is person-to-person sales. So
I buy one from you, or
yeah,
you buy.
Yeah, right. Now, I know you, I trust you, but I don't know what your background would say. And so I think that's where we really want to focus, is the person-to-person sales. And you think about, I've been to a lot of gun shows too in my time. It's not the booths where you have to worry about it. You have to worry about the tags hanging off people's guns.
Okay, safe storage. They tried this last year. They didn't want to put any punishment on it if you didn't do it, but safe storage in Tennessee, there is no law that imposes any penalty for someone who fails to secure an unattended firearm, leaves it accessible to unsupervised minor. 27 states, though, do have laws with that purpose. What are you proposing safe storage-wise?
So I think we'd like to get to the point where there is a penalty, right, if you don't do it. I think
otherwise, why would you do it?
Why would you do it? But we also understand it earlier, right? We have to work with what we've got to work with. So where we're going to focus on safe storage is education. I think if more people knew what an unattended firearm, the unintended consequences of an unattended firearm are, again, go back to the suicide rates, go back to the fact that, we've had several children that they're precocious. They pick it up, they play with it, they take a life and ruin a life just like that.
Well, here in Metro, guns stolen from cars. Chief Drake is trying, but they keep increasing because people don't lock up their guns in their cars. They leave them in the seat, leave them in the glove box, leave the cars open.
That's right. And it's a trick bag, though, right? Because you don't want to penalize the victim of a crime, and I understand that argument. So I think what we're going to focus on, what we have focused on, and I appreciate the legislature funding BSAs last year.
Yep.
Governor put it in his budget. That was great. Support by leadership. We need to do more education, just more education on what it truly means to securely store your firearm. It's not just lock your car. It's get a biometric safe, get a safe in the console, in your house, same thing. It's not just put it on the top of the closet, lock it up.
The other aspect that you're hoping for, temporary transfer law. Tennessee law does not provide any temporary limits on access to firearms when someone is a known danger. So what do you propose? They looked at this last year. Governor Lee was behind enhanced transfer laws, temporarily taking weapons away from someone who was deemed to have mental issues maybe, or a danger to himself or someone else, but it went nowhere.
That's right, and that's unfortunate because that is the right answer, right? I mean, this part of the challenge that we face today is not just a firearm challenge, right? There is a mental health crisis happening in this state and happening in this country and basically happening in this world. Can't solve you can't build enough beds to handle that solution, so you need to have some way to take the firearm away from the individual that may be a harm to themselves or others. That said, it didn't go anywhere in the special session. It didn't go anywhere last year. So what can we do to enhance what's on the books today, right? Scott County here in Tennessee has a great tool where somebody has to attest where their firearms have been moved in a domestic violence situation. I mean, we already have a temporary transfer. It's in the domestic violence law.
Right.
We just need to be thinking about how do we use that when we can't find a place for people that have mental health challenges that may be a harm to themselves or others are going to get care.
There are in this state, I think the majority of gun owners are responsible gun owners.
Agreed.
Do you need those folks more than anybody to be with your cause, to have them speak about this? Because I believe a person who's a responsible gun owner wants to save lives, wants to be careful with it, wants his neighbor to be careful with it. He has children too. How do they help your message to get something where it is not imposing on the Second Amendment rights, but is making this community safer?
I agree. I think gun owners are an important part of this conversation, right? Again, I'm a gun owner. Several of the people on our board are gun owners. We need to be more vocal about we are responsible gun owners. We believe in the Second Amendment. But there's a fine line there, right? And the same thing with federally licensed firearm dealers. Every federally licensed firearm dealer I've talked to has said absolutely there should be background checks for anybody that wants to buy a firearm. 610,000 background checks are done through TBI in this state, right? General rule of thumb is there's another 20% firearm sales happening in the state that are person to person. So that means about 730,000 sales in the state, 120 of them don't have background checks. We've got to fix that. because there's rules to say who should and shouldn't own a gun.
Quickly, about 40 seconds left.
Sure.
The biggest misconception about anybody proposing any kind of gun safety resolution, you're going to come take my guns away, you're going to outlaw guns. That's not what you're seeking.
No, we don't. No, absolutely not. We will not. We are not about taking guns away from anybody. We just want there to be stronger safety measures in place that will help us make Tennessee a safer community. And we want to do it our way, not our way, organizational way, but the Tennessee way, right? That's why our board is Tennesseans. That's why the majority of our donors are Tennesseans. There's a Tennessee solution here somewhere, and it may take a while to get there, but we're committed for the long haul.
Todd Cruz with Safer Voices for Tennessee. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Bob.
Stay with us. This week continues in a moment. And that will do it for another edition of This Week. I do want to thank my guest, Todd Cruz. We hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week. Between now and then, you have a great week.